Architectural Builder Supply is pleased to present you with this recording of the technical question that is listed in the title of this video.
This call may be monitored and recorded for quality assurance.
Are you going to do it, or is someone else going to prep the door?
I would actually invite any kind of, commentary you have there. I think I'm going to do it with somebody that's going to help me, but ultimately I'm going to take the door off the hinges, cut the square or the rectangle on the other doors, but I'm not going to do any of that until I get that louver to see kind of what I'm working with.
Yeah, that's
Is there something else
really
I need to be aware of?
Not really. I was only putting my 2 cents in because I've done this hundreds of times. And when I would take a door and prep it, especially a customer's door, you have to really go out of your way to make sure you're not going to damage the door. So what I would do would be things like put masking tape on the underside of my jigsaw, if that's the tool that you're using. I would personally use a router, but for some people that's too much work to fixture that. So
hold on, let me write this down so I can do it. Masking tape?
Yeah, because when you... under the base, because as you move the jigsaw, you don't want to scratch the door because, it'll happen imperceptibly. Now, what I do is I take the door off the hinges, get it on my sawhorses, make sure that, in the shop, we'd have some old carpeting and we would, get that glued down to our sawhorse so that the door's not going to get damaged. I would clamp that down so the door doesn't move on you because it will when you start to cut. I would take my regular 3/8, chuck drill, and I would drill 4 holes. And I would be mindful that the outer circumference of that hole isn't creeping into the area that I don't want to cut. So make sure that you are drilling biased towards the inside of the hole, the half the thickness of the drill bit, so that you can make a nice clean radius there. And then once, and obviously measure twice and cut once applies to everything we do when it comes to cutting. Once you got the 4 holes, simply take your jigsaw and connect the dots. Some guys will use a skill saw. You know what? You can change spark plugs with a toothbrush. It's just not the best tool. So I would use a jigsaw, but I would be very mindful to not attempt to drill through the door all at once. What is the core of the door? Is it hollow or solid?
I'm guessing it's solid because it's heavy as can be.
Okay. If it's it's obviously solid if it's heavy. You've got to be real careful, and you might want to put a pencil line and have someone watch underneath to make sure that jigsaw blade isn't bending away from the line of where you want to cut. You'll have it perfect on one side, but you flip it over and that damn thing bent, that damn thing moved, it got a little warped on you, and now your hole's 1/8 of an inch too big. So you want to be mindful of that. What we've done in the past is you could take a jigsaw blade and literally cut it in size so that it's not long enough so that it pierces through the other side, but it's not too short that it leaves the face of the door as you're cutting, and then flip the door over and then connect your dots again. This is why a router is really a better tool, because you can, you put that plunge router in and you're just, you've got to go around it many times as you, drop your router bit in a 3/16 deeper every time, but it gives you such a clean cut. But you got to get wood, you got to get that to the right size and clamp it all down to the door. We would literally build a little template to do it. But a jigsaw is going to work fine, but you want to make sure you don't damage the door with your tools. Don't use the door as your workbench. Don't put any tools on there. If you are, put something down. I'd go out to the shop and I'd tell, get your screwdriver off the customer's door. Put it on your workbench. And that's really all. Cutting steel doors is easier because you have a short blade where it never tries to pierce through the other side at once. And the other thing is, if you had someone with you, get your wet dry vac and have it right there to collect all that, so you don't have to sweep it up and it doesn't end up in your lungs. So capture that immediately. But they're 2 small holes, and you really shouldn't go wrong at all. You could even go a step further and put a piece of 1/8 inch tempered hardboard over the entire door, then cut through all of it so that your so that your door is not going to be marred at all. But it's painted, so if something happened, you're going to paint anyway. And allow yourself time to paint those louvers because they're just little louvers, but they're a little bastard in terms of how much time they take to actually paint and paint nice. So
should you paint them before you put them on?
See, I would definitely paint them before I put them on because I can deal with it in my hands better. I can prop it up. I might even spray it if you have some sort of low PSI equipment for doing that, or just a brush. But I would personally not paint them on the door. It's a little bit of a drag. And then you can paint them in the garage so you're not carrying the fumes into the house. Mm-hmm. So that's how I would personally do it. And I would try to paint it at least twice so that there was no texture of the wood coming through. Priming it first is always a good idea. They do make wood primer, obviously. And that will help give you that glassy type finish that you may want, a real smooth finish, by putting a primer on there. Sanding it, obviously, but this wood will be very smooth to begin with, and you'd be very tempted to not sand it at all. But you should hit it with some, very fine sandpaper, 160, something in that range, something just to clean it, and then get the paint, get the micro sawdust out of the pores of the wood. If you have a compressor, hit it with compressed air, but no moisture onto it because that'll build up moisture. Make sure it's dry, and we're overthinking it, but that's how I would do it. Is the bottom line.
I'm looking at a router. I'm not a woodworking guy, but I see what a router is. It looks like it has a bit on the end of it, and you just kind of sink it in.
That's right.
But ultimately, why is that more beneficial to use something like that? I just want to understand it because I might go get one.
Yeah, so it's going to be a cleaner cut because you're going to take some wood and clamp it to the door so that it's your straight edge of the router, and you can then go all the way down through the door and cut it all in one operation without running the risk of the blade bending, and you'll have an equally clean cut on both sides of that door. A router and a caliper are the woodworker's best friends. You could. Some guys are going to do it with a skill saw because that's the tool they have. But I don't know that I would go buy a router for this one job, but it's awfully nice to have a router at times.
It looks like, it's not a cheap tool if you get a good one.
If you get something Porter cable, the problem that you've got on this is you'll need a plunge router, which means it's going to be a bigger horse, and you're going to need a 2.5-inch long bit. So you won't be able to use a standard router. It must be a plunge router. I like Porter cable myself. I've owned DeWalt. They're all good. I just kind of stick with Porter cable. It's the one I've had good luck with.
I'll have to see maybe a friend or a business associate has a plunge router.
Yeah, it'll have to be a plunge router because you could never make that all in one pass. You could if it was a 20 amp, 5-horse mounted to a CNC machine. You could do it, sure, but not by hand, not by hand.
But if I had a router, you said something about mounting a piece of wood to the door.
Yeah, you'd have to build yourself a 1x thick. Like 3/4 poplar, whatever, and you'd have to build a template that would be placed on the door and then clamped down so that you could then run your router around the interior of that template is what it would be. The advantage of having a template is if you knew, I'm going to do 6 more of these next year, then I'll have the template already made. But you'd have to build that template based on how much the router guide needs in relationship to the hole that you want to create. So if the hole's 10 inch wide, you got to add for the router collet half of the diameter of the router guide, and then that's how big your template is. I would not, you've got to have a need for a router to buy one just for this job because your doors are just going to be particle board. They will be heavy. They won't be hard to cut. But we would, in a shop setting, we would, of course, use a router.
Got it. All right, I got good notes there. I'll keep these for whenever that stuff comes. And if you can just email me the receipt, I'd appreciate it, Richard.
Oh, you bet it, sir. I'll have an order confirmation over to you in about 5 minutes and then a paid invoice when the material ships.
Okay, very good. I appreciate all your help and sorry for being such a pain in the butt.
No, sir. I'm glad that you called. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Have a nice afternoon.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Architectural Builders Supply hopes you have enjoyed this program. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.